everyone, welcome to another Procreate tutorial. This is the drawing that we will be completing in today's video. If you are new here, I mainly post Procreate tutorials, so if you are interested in that, go ahead and subscribe. However, to get started, I do have the color palette linked in the description below. As you can see, there are lots of different shades and things that we're using, so go ahead and go download that. It's totally free. Open up the file and it'll import automatically into Procreate so that we can use it for the drawing if you are following along. Let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we're going to set up our canvas, and these are the dimensions that I have used for this. It is 10 inches by 10 inches at 300 dpi, and the color profile is this sRGB with a bunch of letters and numbers. So we'll start out on layer 1, and in our color palette, again, you'll see that we have a lot of different colors here. The first row is mostly the background, the second row is the moon, and the third row are all the cloud colors. But we will start with this first gray color on the top row and drag that all on the background. And that is our first step. And then add another layer on top of that one and grab the white color, the second one. And we are going to use the selection tool here. Make sure it's on rectangle and then click this color fill button on the bottom. And this way we can draw a rectangle on our canvas and it'll automatically fill it in with the color that we have selected, the white color. So that is a way to get a perfect rectangle. And then click the selection button again to turn it off, and then click it again to turn it back on, and unclick the color fill option, and then we are going to draw a squarish shape towards the top of the rectangle that we just drew, leaving space on the top left and right, with obviously a lot of space on the bottom. Click the arrow tool and drag it off the screen, and now we have our Polaroid shape. And then we're just going to drag it to the middle, turn the snapping and magnetics on, so that we can snap it into the middle of the screen here. But this is our Polaroid shape, so take some time to do this since this will be the main part of our design. Next, we are going to duplicate the layer, the Polaroid layer that we just did, and we are going to click on this first color on the second row and drag that to fill in the shape. And then we are going to drag that one below the white layer. Click the arrow and then drag it to the left and the bottom just a little bit. This is creating a shadow underneath the Polaroid. And then go back into your layers menu and click on the little N, which means normal, and drag it up to multiply, so that this is now a multiply layer, which makes it look more shadowy. Click this adjustments tab and click Gaussian Blur for the layer. Drag it to about 10% for the Gaussian Blur. This just kind of makes it look more shadowy behind the Polaroid. So that is our main part. We're just going to drag it down a little bit more so it's a little more visible. Okay, so now all the layers that we make are going to be in between these two layers, above the shadow layer but below the white Polaroid layer. Grab this dark blue color in the color palette on the first row, grab the selection tool again, turn color fill on, and we are just going to drag a little shape behind the Polaroid so that it's not sticking out of the edges, but it fills that entire square. And that's our night sky. Add a new layer above that, and we are going to draw the moon. So go back into your color palette, select this first color on the second row again, go to your brushes menu, and we are going to go to the calligraphy menu. You find the monoline brush, put it at about 20%, and draw a circle. Hold it down so it snaps to a circle and touch your finger on the screen to make it a perfect circle. Put it in this upper left corner here, and then fill it in. Next, add a new layer on top of that one. Turn this one into a clipping mask, so click it and click clipping mask. And then go into our color palette and we're going to do the second color on the second row. And then in our brushes menu, we are going to go to charcoals. And this first one, the to be compressed at about 25%, full opacity. And we're going to do the upper left corner of the moon and just kind of lightly drag the brush across the upper left part of the moon. Go back into the color palette and select the third color on the second row and do the same thing on the bottom right section of the moon. So this just kind of gives it more definition, some highlights and some lowlights. And then maybe go back in with the lighter color again if you need to add a little more, just to really give it some good texture. Okay, now we are going to go back into the layers menu, add a new layer on top of the one that we just created, turn that one into a clipping mask, and then in the color section, grab the last color on the second row, and we are going to switch our brush. We are going to go to the organic section, find the clay brush. It is about 30% for our size, and we are going to lightly drag this all over the moon shape, but we're going to try to make it a little darker in the bottom right corner, but we do want it all over the entire moon. It just gives it that nice moon-like texture. Okay, that looks good. And then next we're going to add a little blur to it. So click the little wand icon in the top left and click Gaussian Blur, layer, and drag it to about 3%. Just want to give it a little bit of a blur effect so it's not so harsh. Then on the layers tab, find the original circle layer and make a duplicate of it. And click on the bottom one and then click on the wand again, Gaussian Blur again, layer, and we're going to drag this to about 30%. So this is going to make the glow behind our moon. Okay, we're going to draw our first cloud. So let's go back into our layers menu, add a new layer on top of the Polaroid, the white one, and go back into our colors, grab the first color on the last row, and then in our brushes menu, we are going into inking and dry ink. This is one of my favorite brushes. The size is 25%, and we are going to draw a straight line right underneath the Polaroid, underneath the little window part on the white part. A straight line, click on the screen to make it perfectly horizontal, and then we are just going to draw some cloud shapes, and we're going to go into the blue area. So we're going to cover up that edge of the Polaroid window there, but we're just going to draw some little curves here and there, back and forth, up and down, to get a nice cloud shape like this. We want to leave quite a bit of room in the sky so that we can add some stars later, so don't cover it up entirely. We'll add a little more variation to the curves here, some little smaller ones, and then we're actually going to fill this all in by hand rather than dragging the color on. The dry ink brush has quite a bit of texture to it, and I wanted that texture throughout the entire cloud, so that is why we are just filling it in by hand. Awesome. Next we will do our cloud in front, the lighter pink one. So go back into our layers menu, add another layer on top of this one, go into the color palette and select the fourth pink color. So the first three colors are the back cloud, the shadows and highlights, and then we have the front cloud and the shadows and highlights. So it's the fourth pink color on that last row. And we are going to draw another perfectly horizontal straight line. So tap your finger on the screen, and we just want it a little lower than the bottom of our first cloud and off to the right instead of the left. We are going to rearrange them a little bit, so don't worry too much on their placement. But I do want the little bumps to go up into the cloud above so that it kind of covers parts of it. Well, we actually want it to cover all of it, so make sure that your bumps cover all of it, and do, some up, some down, some big, some small. And again, we're going to fill it all in by hand. there's that. So now I want to do some rearranging. I'm going to grab this bottom cloud and just scooch it over to the right just a little bit using the freeform selection tool so that it doesn't change the entire size of the cloud. I just wanted to squish it to the right a little bit more, move it over so it's not so far over to the left, but take some time to just rearrange your clouds a little bit. I wanted the back one off to the left, the front one off to the right. Now we're going to add some shadows and highlights to the clouds. So in your layers menu, add a new layer on top of the dark pink cloud in the back, turn it into a clipping mask, and then in the color palette, grab the second pink color on the last row, the darkest one. And then in the brushes, we're going to go back to the charcoal, the 2B compressed at about 25%. And we are just going to drag this all along the bottom of that back cloud. And we're going to hold the pencil kind of side to side rather than up and down, gives it a little bit more texture spread out. And we're just going to draw this mostly across the bottom and a little up into some of the main parts of the cloud as well. Then go back to the color palette and select the third pink color. And we are going to do that on the top as well, again holding it more side to side and horizontal. And then we're also going to drag some in the bigger parts of the cloud as well, just to kind of give it a little more shape, because the cloud would have, you know, more fluffy parts in front rather than just shadows on the bottom and highlights on the top. There will be some more like volume in the middle and stuff, and this kind of helps it look like that. Okay, that looks good. We're going to do the same thing to the other cloud. So go back to your layers menu, add a new layer on top of the front cloud, turn it into a clipping mask, and then go into the color palette and select the 5th color on that last row. And we are just going to do the same thing all across the bottom, and then a little bit dragging it up into the bigger parts of the cloud to give it some definition. And then go back into the color palette and select the very last color on the last row and do the same thing to the tops. And again, drawing some kind of circular shapes into the clouds as well to kind of add some more highlights. Make some areas a little brighter than others just to give it a lot of definition. Feel free to pause the video and take your time with this before we move on. But next we're going to add the shadows underneath the clouds. So go back into your layers menu, find the dark pink main cloud shape that we made, and then drag it to the left and click duplicate. Select the one that's on the bottom, and we are going to go back into our color palette, find this very first gray color that we used for the background, and then use the arrow tool and make sure that snapping and magnetics are turned on, and then drag that shape downwards a little bit right below the cloud that we made, and then drag the gray color onto it, and then go back into the layers menu, click on the N and drag it up to multiply, and then it will look like a shadow. And then we're going to do the same thing with the upper cloud, so make a duplicate of this pink layer, select the bottom one, select the arrow, drag it down a little bit, fill it with the gray color, and then go back to the layers menu and set it to multiply. So those are our clouds, yay! And then next, our last step, I believe, is that we are going to add the stars to the sky. I wanted to do the clouds and the moon first so that we knew where to put the stars. Back to this dark blue layer that we made the background and add a new layer on top of it. And then go into the color palette and select this 4th color on the top row. It's like a little purplish, light purple. Go back to the dry ink brush that we were using before. The size down to about 15, and then we are just going to draw stars all over the sky. Make some of them bigger, some of them smaller, some of them just tiny little dots, and kind of space them sporadically throughout the sky. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now that we are done with that, we are going to make the stars glow a little. So again, go back to the layers menu, make a duplicate of the star layer, grab the one on the bottom, click on the little wand, Gaussian Blur layer, and drag it to, let's do about 8% or so, 7, somewhere in there, just to give them a teeny bit of glow behind the stars. And that is it for our drawing today. I hope you had fun. If you did, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more Procreate tutorials. Also, if you want to share your finished drawing to Instagram, please do so and then tag me so that I can see how it turned out. While you're there, go ahead and give me a follow so that you can see what I'm working on next. Thanks for watching.